We have a returning guest, Barry Stevenson from Australia, and he was around Scientology in Australia in the early 1960s, and then also at St. Hill Manor in England, and was on the original special briefing course with L. Ron Hubbard. And he's going to tell some great stories about the briefing course back in the 1960s. We think you'll find them enjoyable. Stay tuned. Aloha, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with Janice Gillum-Grady, my co-host. How are you doing today, Janice?
G'day, Mark. I'm doing good. And how are you? What's this with the uncoordinated shirt? That's a new shirt.
That's right. I got a new Hawaiian shirt, a new Aloha shirt, and I'm just sort of showing it off here. And the reason I got this is because my favorite football team since I was 10 years old was the Washington Redskins, okay?
Yeah.
Which then they had to change their name, and now they're the Washington Commanders. Well, after 33 years of not making it very far into the playoffs or anything like that, we finally got a quarterback this year. And this year they went all the way up to the NFC Championship game last Sunday. Now, they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, but they weren't even expected to get this far. Last year, they won 4 games. This year, they've won 16. So I was really happy, and I finally feel proud enough to be able to order something. So I got this Hawaiian shirt, and the W is for Washington. That's their logo. You see the W right here?
Yeah.
And see, then it's got like, hold on, I can do it over here. It's got tiki down here, right?
Yeah.
Coconut, with a drink like.
But that's got nothing to do with Washington D.C. or the Redskins.
But here it's got Commanders, Washington Commanders around the sleeve with the logo, and then across the shoulders in the back it says Washington Commanders. I don't know if you could see this. Can you see this?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
I am representing my team, not with a T-shirt, but with a Hawaiian shirt, Aloha shirt. So
that's great. That's your style.
It's just my tribute, because 56 years I've been a fan of this team. Win or lose, I watch every game, and so I'm proud. Even though they're not in the Super Bowl, they got close, and next year will be even better because we have a quarterback that's really, really good. So anyway, that's why I got this shirt.
Well, good. Now I understand why suddenly it's. Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. How are you doing, Janice?
I'm doing good. I'm keeping busy, staying out of trouble. Yeah. I've got a couple new products. I didn't bring a bottle with me, but I've got the magnesium complex, which is 8 different magnesiums, and I'm really happy with its results, and so have my customers who have bought it so far. So that's a nice win, having that out there.
Well, we'll have to put it on our channel. So next, you'll have to send me a photo, and we can put it up and make a link so that people, if they want to order it, we can talk about it, on a future show.
And I'll have to say, if my dad was alive, he would be very proud of this product because it outdoes the product that he had, Calm.
Oh, wow.
It's much better performance.
Oh, that's great. That's great news. That's great news. Well, we've got a returning guest who's back for and he tells great stories, and
he's very lively.
Very lively. Everybody liked him. Yeah. And so, Janice, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest for today's show?
Yeah, this is a repeat guest all the way from Australia, Barry Stevenson.
Here he comes. Hold on, I got to do this. And hey, g'day, Barry.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
When you say all the way from Australia, it almost sounds like all the way from the moon.
Well, it could be the equivalent of that. But did they Barry? I got a question for you. Did they really land on the moon, or was it staged?
No, they landed.
Okay.
They landed. it's interesting that some people think they didn't, but then some people think the world's flat.
I know.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
still
I
people
know
that
a few
believe
of
that.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know a few of them.
They also, a lot of people deny that the Holocaust happened. And of course, we know it did.
Yes. Yes.
The
Yes,
only
it
thing
did.
you could ask, the only
Now, I
thing you
did use. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
the only thing you could question would be the numbers. That's all.
What
Yeah.
numbers?
Yeah.
The number of people that were exterminated by the Nazis. That's all.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I was going to say, I did use on the thumbnail for your first interview the upside down map of the world with Australia at the top. But of course, in Australia, it's right side up. So
That is a correct map of the world.
Oh, I thought you were trying to confuse me.
No, I always knew Australia was on top of the world. Because and I was always told if I dug down, I'd come to China.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
my story continues.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you say you wanted me to cover the Class 8 section?
Yeah, but, we
let's
thought we
go
were
back.
at St. Hill. That was the last we were talking about, you being at St. Hill in the 1960s on the briefing course.
Yeah.
But there was a great deal more going on there at St. Hill when I was there.
Yeah.
Right.
So is it the Class 8 course you want to cover or St. Hill?
No, let's start with St. Hill. And you mentioned you sailed from Australia to England. What ship did you go on?
It was the Sitmar line. It was called the Fair Sky.
That's the same one I did.
Oh.
I left in May 66 on the Fair Sky.
Yeah, you came a year later. I left in October of 65.
Okay.
Of course, I had to escape from Australia.
Why?
Well, I was married.
Yeah.
And at that time in Australia, to leave the country, you had to get the wife's approval.
Oh.
Okay.
So she wasn't going to okay.
There's no way in the world my first wife would have given me approval to leave Australia for Scientology because she was dead set against it. It's very
okay.
So I tricked her into it. But that's another story. Anyway, off I sail to England. And I have Malcolm Nyman book us a third-rate hotel in London.
Now, how did you already know Malcolm?
Well, Malcolm and I were hunting kangaroos for a living back in Australia before he went back to England.
Got it.
He'd come out on the immigration system that the Australian government was offering, and he stayed the required 3 years, and then he went back.
Okay.
So anyway, we arrive in England, and we go to the hotel, and I called Cal Wigney up, who told us that he's got a room for us at his house in Hillcrest, Dorman's Park. And he said to me, I want you to do me a favor. He said, I've got a car up there being repaired by a mechanic in such and such a suburb. I want you to pick it up and drive it down to East Grinstead. And I knew I could drive on the Australian license for a year. I said, well, okay, I guess that'll give us transport to get down to East Grinstead. So we went across to pick up the car, and the mechanic said, you're joking. He said, the block's cracked. The engine's clagged out. He said, I told Cal it's not worth a shit. You got to get rid of it. And I said, well, he asked me to bring it back. I said, could we get it going? He said, well, maybe. So we pushed up and down the road and pushed all the water out off the top of the pistons, and we finally got it going. In the meantime, we had checked out at the hotel and left Joyce sitting in the foyer with the suitcases. 6 hours later, and we don't come back, she's in grief, and she calls the Scotland Yard and says, my husband's disappeared. Scotland Yard says, well, ma'am, we don't start looking for missing persons till 48 hours. So call us back if you don't get him in 48 hours. We finally get the old Wolseley going. and it's unregistered. And it's not insured.
Oh, dear.
And we drive it, Malcolm and I drive it back across London at night,
Okay.
pick up Joyce in the car, and off we go to East Grinstead. Now, I have to tell you, the old Wolseley, it was really clagged out because although it was a 4-forward speed car, you could only get up to about 10 miles an hour before it started knocking. Knock, 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 oh, change the next gear, knock, knock, oh, and get up to about 35 miles an hour, and that's about as fast as you go. And I said, oh, fellas, let's put some oily postulates on everything here. We've got to get to St. Hill. Because when we lifted the lid to look at the engine at the mechanic's place, the generator, there were generators in those days, not alternator, was wired on with a coat hanger. And there was a piece of cord supporting the accelerator cord. What a piece of garbage. Anyway, we're on our way and the fuel gauge is down near quarter full. I said, Malcolm, how far do we have to go? He said, oh, about 35 miles. I said, you know how to get there? He said, oh, well, yeah, but I've never gone there in the dark. Well, we got lost once. We took a wrong turn at a roundabout, and finally the fuel gauge is going down to 0. And I said, Malcolm, how much further is it? He said, oh, I don't know. He said, you must be getting close by now. This is like 9 o'clock at night. And just as we come into East Grinstead, bang, there's this loud noise. Wow, what was that? The fan belt broke.
Oh, God.
Now we're running on the battery. I said, how far is it to Hillcrest? He said, another couple of miles the other side of East Grinstead. So we turn into the little private area called Dorman's Park. And as we turn into the street where Hillcrest was, the engine died. It ran out again. I threw in the clutch and threw it in neutral, and we're rolling down the slope. I said, Malcolm, which house is it? Which house? He said, I think it's the second one from the left over there. So I make a big sweeping turn, and I come in the gate and drive down the drive to the back door, and that car never drove again.
But it got you there. You know, that reminds me of the car my mom got when she went to St. Hill. Dad was in Australia with us kids, and then he sent us over on the Fair Sky. And so she got a car because she rented from Cal Wigney, just like you did. But she got this car to get us to school. It was when my brother had to push the button inside. No, she pushed the button inside while he was out front cranking it. He had to crank this thing to get it started. And then we'd all quickly, or sometimes we'd have to push it because the cranking wouldn't work. And then all quickly try and jump in. It was like a Three Stooges type thing getting in this car. But it got us to school and it got her to St. Hill.
Yeah, I understand that a lot of those cars were sold to the next lot of students, And eventually they clagged out, you know. Well, anyway, what they did with that car, they took it up to St. Hill and they threw it in the hole, which they filled in, and they built the new castle. So that car is underneath the new car to this day. Anyway, that's one story. Now, we were staying in this huge house. It was called Hillcrest. And it was 110 or 115 years old at that time. And he had all kinds of rooms which Cal and Val Wigney were renting out to students. So we had a room at the back. It was a nice little room and nice garden and what have you at the side. The place was well manicured. It was on about 1/4 acre. Quite nice. Typical English countryside house. And in order to get transportation up to St. Hill, Cal had an old Thames van. So the students would get in the van, but there were no seats in the back. So they had to sit on the floor. Well, after a short period of time, some of the other students living in the area wanted transportation too, because there was no transportation from this area to St. Hill. So Cal was having us pick them up. I was driving and take them at St. Hill. And as a driver, I got my transportation free. Well, anyway, Joyce and I both. After a while, we got so many students going to St. Hill, they wouldn't fit in the van. And he'd say, just shove them in. So you open the door and you say, how am I going to get in there? Next thing, they grab you by the seat of the pants and shove you in, slam the door behind. And everybody's rolling around and grab ass.
But they got on course. They got to course on time, right?
Oh, always got on course on time. So anyway, that graduated up to more and more people wanting transportation. We got another van. Well, that eventually evolved into something called Arrow Transport, where we got some comma vans.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got some pictures in my album of the vans with the logo on the side, Arrow Transport, with Malcolm at the wheel. Well, we started to offer. This is before Ron came back from Rhodesia. Okay, we started to offer people weekend trips to Stonehenge, priories, galleries, Hastings Castle, places like that. You know, that all
you're all being dilettantes.
Yeah, so we get up 12 or 13 people and we go off down to Stonehenge. And in those days, you could walk around and touch a stone. So I understand they stop you from doing that now. Well, I got pictures of me at Stonehenge, you know. And, oh, yes, and a Winchester Cathedral with a round table on the wall, hanging on the wall.
Right. But before all the long lines, they now have lines going around that place. It's like, really? Do you want to stand in line to get in?
Well, I also, when we were on our way to England, we were able to go up inside the Cheops Pyramid to the King's Room. Okay, we were able to do that then. You can't do that anymore either. So that were the good old days as far as tourists were concerned. But anyway, then our Cal, because he was such an entrepreneur, he started offering people moving services. So if they had to move from one location to another, guess who had to do it? They'd get up at 4:30 in the morning and take the seats out of the goddamn van, run over, move the people, come back, put the seats in and go and get the students and take them up to St. Hill. It was a long day. And then as things picked up, business started really getting warmed up at St. Hill, more and more people were coming from the United States and other countries, and you couldn't get accommodation in East Grinstead anywhere.
Right.
So over a range of hills was Tunbridge Wells, about 15 miles away.
Yep.
So Cal arranged with a hotel over there to take the students at a reduced rate. And part of the deal was he would supply the transportation for the students to go to St. Hill. Guess who the driver was?
You.
Well, I used to say to them, I come over and I'd say to the new people, okay, I'll be here in the morning precisely at 8:30, or was it 7:30? I think might have been 7:30. I forget the time exactly. It's been so many years.
Yeah.
By radio time. I'll wait 5 minutes and we're off. Because students at that time, the tape players at St. Hill were big chunky things.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
And the tapes were on big reels.
Yeah, so, reel to reel.
And some of those machines didn't work very well. So you had to get there early to get a good one. And the students wanted to get there early enough so to get themselves a good tape machine. So that's why we left so early, so that people could, get a good machine. Well, I would arrive and I'd wait exactly 5 minutes and off I go. And sometimes the American students wouldn't come down in time. And they'd be coming down the stairs, I'm pulling off, and they're going, wait. And then they come up to me at St. Hill Ladders. It cost me £25 to come over by taxi. And I was running down the stairs. I said, I told you I'd be there exactly 7:30 by radio time, and I leave exactly 5 minutes later. Come hell high or high water, I'm out of here. Next morning, there they are, standing there with their brown bag, because they always got a sandwich from the hotel. I don't wait in line. And everybody appreciated me being that regular.
Yeah. Of course.
Well, I had an appointment with a pre-clear. I was on the briefing course, see. I had an appointment with a pre-clear. I forget what time it was. And that day, there was nothing but fog between East Grinstead and Tunbridge Wells. I mean, thick fog, typical English fog. So we drive up over this range of hills and down the other side to Tunbridge Wells and dump them off. And now I'm coming back by myself. And I look at the time. I said, I'm going to be late. And the auditor's code says, always be in time for session. Okay. Well, of course, there has to be extenuating circumstances occasionally. But I took it. I tried to get there exactly on time. So I'm going back over that range of hills in the middle of the fog. And I'm driving like this. And suddenly, oh, there's a car in front of me driving at 10 miles an hour. And I want to get past him. The thick fog, what are you going to do? Overtake into thick fog? And I knew that road like the back of my hand because I drove every day for 10 months.
Right.
And I knew a little bit further up there was going to be a straightaway. So when we came up around that corner, I knew it was a straightaway. I pulled out and I could feel that there was nothing ahead and I'd overtake. And if I pulled out, I could feel something there. I'd pull back and a truck would go past. I'd pull out, a car would go past. I pull out nothing and I'd overtake. And I did that 8 times driving over that mountain. And you know what? I've never been able to do it again.
So that you were demonstrating your OT abilities.
Exactly. But the point was, I've never been able to do it since. I pull out and go, up and pull back. Anyway, I arrived back in time. I was in time for the pre-clear session.
Good.
So Cal Wigney, he ended up becoming an SP. Did you know that?
Well, yes, I do. And I know Val moved back to Melbourne.
Who?
Val Wigney. I'd heard she'd
moved to
Melbourne.
She and Harvey escaped from St. Hill with our help. You see, she and Harvey came down she'd had a baby, as you know, Susanna. She had a baby. The baby was about, 12 months old at that time. And of course, they were in the Sea Org working at St. Hill, Harvey and Val. So they came down for dinner one night, and it was a cafeteria style situation, I understand, because I wasn't there. And they walked up with their plate, and they walked up with their plate, and they were giving 1 baked potato. That's all they had. That's all they got for dinner. Well, poor old Val just absolutely caved in over that. And she just wanted to leave, but they didn't have any money. So we sent them the airfare, and they came across, and they stayed with us for a short period of time. And we helped them get an apartment just up the road from where we lived in Studio City. No, it was Sherman Oaks. And they helped
you were in California?
Yes, I was in California at this time.
Okay.
So that's how they got away from St. Hill. And that's how they got down to Melbourne, like you said. That's how they returned to Melbourne. They went from there. They stayed in California for about a year, but then Harvey couldn't find work. So Harvey's family had given him $7,000. So they used that money to go back to Australia. Anyway, that's a little aside for you.
Right.
But I had a nice big room up in the Newcastle, a nice big mahogany desk, really a little bit too wide, ideally, for auditing, in my opinion. But there I was, and I was glad, very handling people up there. Oh, I was on the class. This is
Well, the castle was still under construction, or as the rooms got completed, you got in there, or you waited until that wing was done?
Well, they were trying to save money, right? So instead of getting someone to build the whole thing, they paid contractors to do part of it. And as a result, they did a lousy job. And the foundation started to sink. So they had to cut a trench along the back of the building where they were going to do some support work. And my office was at the end, right down the far end where the very little was going on. And I just finished with a pre-clear and sent them off to Qual. And I was busting for a leak. And from St. Hill all the way down to the bloody toilets was about 250 yards. So I thought I'd just go around the back of the building and let fly. So I stepped around the back of the building and fell in the hole. I didn't know it was there. I go up there like, well, what happened?
That'll teach you.
So Barry,
Anyway.
Barry, did they discover that the castle was sinking because of the car that was buried underneath it?
Right.
That might have been the reason. Anyway,
Now-
coming back to the student on the briefing course, I got up to level 2, and they came up to me one day on course and said, "You're going to be on television doing rehabs at 2:00 this afternoon." I said, "Me?" I said, "I'm on level 2. We don't do that until we get to level 3. He said, "Well, according to your thing, you did some rehabs back in Sydney, so you're on television this afternoon." Well, I hadn't been on a meter for quite a while, and I was a little nervous about it. I'm going to be on television. One camera on the pre-clear and one camera on the meter. So at 2:00 in the afternoon, Neville Jury from South Africa was my pre-clear, and I found 7 points where he had gone release, and I found 7 floating needles. Now,
Why was this on television? What was the purpose for that?
I'm just coming back to that. I should have said it before.
Okay.
What happened, there was a lot of confusion on what a free needle was or a floating needle was. In those days, it wasn't called a floating needle, it was called a free needle, but there was no description of what a free needle was or what the end phenomenon was in relation to it, see? And so there were a lot of hidden standards on what this free needle was, this floating needle. So they decided to put on a demonstration so the whole of the St. Hill briefing course could see what a floating needle was like.
Oh, okay.
And I'm the silly bugger that has to do it. So I sit there and I get 7 of them on Neville Jury. So we come out and Joe Van Staden was up on the dais and he said, "All right, well, we saw the demonstration." He said, "I want a show of hands for anybody who saw 7 floating needles." No hands went up. "All right, how about 6? No hands. No hands went up until he said, "Anybody see 3? A few hands went up. And then when they finished, he said, "Well, you're all wrong. There were 7.
Well, that would have been when he was in charge of Qual, Joe.
Yeah, that's right.
He was
a
the Qualsec.
Well, because I don't know if I went over this before, but because when we left Australia, we were told we could co-audit power. Did I cover this before?
Yeah, we
No.
talked about that. Well, we did talk
Co-auditing
about power.
Okay, so I got to the end of level 4 and we couldn't go any further because we couldn't get power. We had to pay for it and I didn't have the money. Oh, that's right. And I told you that we cabled Sydney and they ignored us, and
Yeah,
Mary
that's
Sue
right.
cabled Sydney and they ignored her too. So she finally said, "Well, if you sign a contract for St. Hill, we'll give you power now. You can finish the briefing course and then you can go on from." And I said, "Okay." So what choice did we have? We're stuck in England. So we signed it. We finish the briefing course, we get our power, and we're on the level 7 course learning how to give deliver power, right? Now, the students on the level 7 course were in qual at the back. There was a couple of people who were given the level 7 course as an acknowledgement for some of the help they'd given Ron somewhere along the line. And one of them was a mission holder from Vancouver, Elsie Griffith. So we're on the level 7 course studying, and part of the job of the students on the level 7 course was to take the clearing course people who wanted to do the clearing course and give them a clearing course sec check. Now, if you remember anything about sec check information, you give the person the question, you ask them what does it mean to you, and you ask them what period of time in their life it would cover, so to make sure stuff gets stirred up properly. And then when it's all done, you ask them, and if they say no, then you check the question on the meter. And if it reads, right, you go and get the answer.
Right.
How can you clear 60 questions in 60 minutes? You can't.
One question a minute.
You cannot do that.
No, you can't.
But my fellow students on the level 7 course were taking people off for a sec check and coming back in 1 hour. And I'm saying, how could they do 60 questions? I know how to sec check. How could they do that? So I went to Joe Van Staden and I said, Joe, when I take somebody off to do a sec check, it takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I said, these guys coming back in an hour. I said, am I doing something wrong? He said, no, Barry, no, you're doing fine. Don't worry about it. I know what's going on. I'm watching it. But he didn't do anything about it, by the way. Well, doing that, because I knew how to sec check. And I ended up being the best sec checker at St. Hill, although I'm trying to think of a name. What was the Guardian's name at that time?
Marilyn?
No, it was
Jane Kember. Jane Kember wasn't. Mary Sue and then Jane.
Well, anyway, her husband, they were from Melbourne, I believe. Her husband had the reputation of being the best sec checker, but he wasn't. I was.
Well, Jane was South African.
Yeah, I think I told you I sec checked Otto.
Otto Roos?
Did I tell you I sec checked Otto?
No.
Well, it was the orgate check. It was the orgate.
We'll carry on with the story we're on, so that way we don't go too far off. And just for our viewers to know, when he says sec checking, that's where you're asking questions to find out information.
Yeah, a security check.
It's a security check. So that's what he's talking about.
So one day I take this young woman, well, was she about 35 or 36, for clearing course sec check. Well, we're about an hour into it, and she's talking about somebody, and the TA's going up.
Tone arm.
Yeah, tone arm's going up. And I immediately realised there's something wrong here. So when she stopped talking, I said to her, was this person suppressive to you? Oh, my God, the meter blew down. Good indicators coming. Oh, geez. Off to bloody ethics to get it sorted out. And I'm back on course. A couple of days later, she comes back. Same thing. We get into session or into about an hour into the thing, and I find another SP on it. I find a total of 3 SPs on this person's case on a sec check.
Wow. Okay.
She writes up a big commendation on me, about 2 or 3 pages, you know. Nice acknowledgement. So Otto Roos comes along and takes me off level 7 and puts me on a cashier's post. I was there for a week or two, and I went in and said to him, look, I didn't come here to be a cashier. I came here to be an auditor. What'd you put me on a cashier's post for? He said, oh, you were too long on the briefing course, in my opinion. Well, he said, I did the briefing course in 6 weeks. Well, you know how he did it in 6 weeks? He was listening to a tape and reading policies HCOBs at the same time.
Can I ask you a question?
Eh?
Yeah, I want to ask you a question about the briefing course, because I don't think we've gone over this in terms of what was the schedule like on the briefing course, and what did you actually have to do? Because my recollection is that it took a long time to do, because you had to listen to hundreds of lectures by Hubbard, right?
The wall of tapes is what it was called.
So can you describe for our viewers what, like if you were going to start the briefing course, what did you actually do? What was your daily schedule, and how long would it typically take?
Good idea. All right, you come in the morning, you start off at 9, and you either in theory or you're in practical. So in theory, you're studying all the materials, okay? And when you think you're ready, you understand the material, you go up to the supervisor, and he gives you a checkout by asking you some key questions about the material and how you'd apply it. And if you answer it to his satisfaction, he signs that off, and you go back and study the next item. And this goes on till you finish your check sheet of items to be done, all the theory. Then when you finish that, they put you on practical, and you go through all the practical training until you get that smooth, and he signs you off on that. And when you signed off on both,
what's the practical, like drilling different things?
Oh yeah, you drill. You have a coach. And you drill on the various whatever the training is for. The practical training is for using the meter, handing the cans, setting up the meter, stuff like that, and have your tables or having like that.
But when you did the drill, you would be asking a teddy bear or a doll or something like that rather than a person.
Well, that didn't come in when I was there till late.
Okay.
Okay, but no difference if it's some person there or a teddy bear. It doesn't make a difference. Your coach is watching how you deliver it, and flunking you if you make fumbles or what have you. Anyway, so you got the theory done, you got the practical done. Now you have to go off into the East Grinstead and find yourself a pre-clear.
Oh, to deliver the processing is what.
Yes.
I have a couple other questions. Did they have clay demos back then? Like, did you have to do clay demonstrations?
Nope.
Okay. Did they have what they called star rate checkouts, where you
star rate checkout? You had a demonstration kit, elastic bands, paper clips,
demos,
demonstrations, right?
When I was there in '66, they were doing clay demos, but I guess
know clay table training and table auditing came in when I was in Sydney.
No, I was on the Dianetics course in '66, early '67, and we had to do clay demos.
Well, that must have been where that we would probably work on an older check sheet. You were in a brand new program.
Right.
Okay. Let me explain. I want to explain because our viewers aren't going to understand what we're talking about. A clay demo is a clay demonstration. You would take some concept that you were studying in a policy letter or a technical bulletin, and you would have to demonstrate it in clay. So you would make little bodies and little things and actually show that you understood it by actually demonstrating it in clay on a clay table. And that was part of it. Yeah, go ahead, Janice.
For Americans, it's clay. For the British, it's plasticine.
Oh, okay.
Modeling clay, yeah.
Modeling clay, yes. And then you had to do little tags on everything. A person, you put his name, and a label a table, and label an e-meter, label food, whatever you do in the clay.
And then the supervisor would then check out your demonstration to make sure that they had to be able to look at it and go, okay, I understand what it is that you're demonstrating here for get a pass. Now, I had another question. Did they actually do star rate checkouts where they actually would ask you definitions of words on the policy or the bulletin you're reading and then ask you questions or that type of, like a spot check?
Not definition of words. Not that, but all the questions were asked about directed to the understanding of the material.
Right.
So if you stumbled on it, you got flunked. So you obviously knew it. So we were looking up words, of course, but the supervisor never asked us the definition of any words at that time. But it was all directed to your understanding of the material. Now, the part I thought you might find interesting is after you finish the theory and you finish the practical,
Mhm.
you have to go out into East Grinstead and find someone to audit. Now, the field had already been muddied by all the previous students that have been through St. Hill. So you think that wasn't fun, finding someone to audit?
So you're talking about non-Scientologists, people
That's
who are
right. You have
not.
to go walk around town saying, would you like a session? Well, you didn't do that, of course. But you walked around and kind of got to talking to people, and then you kind of edge around to saying, is there anything about your life you're not happy with that you'd like to change?
Yeah. Well, Barry, when I was 10 at St. Hill, Joe Thomas from Australia did my grade 0 because she was on the briefing course and I needed a pre-class. So I got my grade 0. And then James Byrne from Rhodesia, who people know, he's been in the Sea Org forever. James became my auditor and did my grades 1 to 4. And we would drive into East Grinstead to where he was boarding and go up into the attic and where he had his auditing stuff set up. He'd give me the session and then we'd drive back to St. Hill to go to the examiner.
That sounds familiar. Well, as I said to you, but James audited more people than anybody else on the briefing course. He wanted to audit them. Okay. He was going out looking for them. Whereas I just wanted to get one through and go on. Because I'd already done a lot of auditing in Sydney, see? So anyway, this went on. My first pre-clear, I got him up to level 3. And when he got to the examiner, he flunked. I had to go and get somebody else to audit up to level 3 before we could go from there on. So I have to go out and get somebody else. This went on 4 bloody times, 4 times. And I tell you what, that was the toughest part, was finding somebody willing to get audited. And 4 times, because for some reason they flunk at the examiner. Because at that time, all you had to do was get a floating needle. Later on, you had to get the cognition. You had to get what was misunderstood sometimes. You didn't immediately say, your needle's floating, that's it, put the hands down. You said, you indicate the needle floating, and then you wait for them to have their cognition or wait for them to say whatever they want to say. But in my time, that wasn't the way it was done. So when they got to the examiner, they still had something they wanted to say, so the needle didn't float. I got flunked, and then go and get another pre-clear. But anyway, it didn't matter.
Where did the lectures? Hubbard gave 90-minute lectures on the briefing course, and he did 100 of them or so. When did those come into the briefing course? Like, did you study that during the theory time period, or how did that all work out?
No. See, you have the theory and practical before lunch, or theory and practical after lunch, depending on what you're on. And then around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he come in and lecture until 5:30 or something like that.
Oh, you were there when he was actually giving the lectures, and he'd lecture on whatever
he's sitting up there on the stage, and he's with a desk and giving us a talk about something.
And they recorded all of these, and of course, then they became a key part of the St. Hill Special Briefing Course for years and years and years. Those lectures. So you were there. So you were there watching him lecture, and he'd talk about whatever it is, auditing or whatever it is he was talking about or researching at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, he was. Some was pretty heavy stuff too, which really you wouldn't think would have been on the briefing course. But you see, on the briefing course, there was a lot of material on GPMs. Goals, problems, and masses. Yeah, there was a lot in the construction of them, how they worked, and the op terms and so on and so forth. So when I got to the clearing course, I expected there to be GPMs on there, but there were no GPMs on the bloody clearing course. So what the hell are we studying all this bloody GPM stuff for, and it doesn't fit in anywhere?
Let me ask you a question. We have this picture. Is this where he gave his lectures? Was inside is this the chapel, Janice, where he gave?
Yeah, that's the chapel.
No, it was the building on the other side.
The pavilion.
Yeah.
The pavilion. Yeah, that right there.
No. Now
The pavilion was, the pavilion was closer to the manor, right off the manor. And then you walk past that and you get to the chapel before you got to reception and qual.
Oh, excuse me. Maybe it was the pavilion because the other building was
the
called
pavilion over there with the white roof over there.
I can't tell.
Yes.
No. A solarium. That's a solarium.
Okay.
The building to the right was called the canteen at that time. See it?
Yeah, if you got your back to the manor, the canteen was on the right, but just before that on the left was the chapel.
That's where he lectured.
Right.
But this is not the chapel. So I always thought where the wishing well was.
That is the chapel.
Okay. And that's where he gave his lectures. Okay.
Yes.
I never remember that wishing well.
Yeah, I remember it because I used to go with Quentin and he would climb in it and get money out of it for us to go to the canteen.
You criminals. You definitely needed sec checking. What were you, like 10, 12 years old? I mean, you were really young, right?
10 years old, and Quentin was probably 12, and he'd just climb in it and hand out the money, and we'd all go to the canteen.
Yeah,
and it was the students throwing their money away.
It's funny how you don't remember the wishing well because you have no interest in wishing wells whatsoever.
No, you just postulate instead. Why a wishing well? Just make a postulate.
So after the lecture at the end, was at the end of the night, at the end of the day after you gave a lecture?
Yeah, I'd have to drive the students back home, and then we end up back at Dorman's Park, which was it was a beautiful old house that had a big mahogany staircase going upstairs, and well, it was owned. It was owned by a squadron leader, a required squadron leader from the RAF, and he had leased it out to Cal and Val through a local agent in East Grinstead, but he lived up in the Midlands. Well, Dorman's Park is a high-class area, so everybody there's got money. So the locals would call up the squadron leader and say, there's a whole bunch of people living in your house. Busloads of them coming out every morning. And he said, well, I leased the house to Mr. and Mrs. Wigney, and there's not supposed to be anybody in there but them. And I'm telling you, they said, you better come down and look at it. So he called the agent, the real estate agent, saying, I want to come down and do an inspection on Saturday morning. Well, the agent would call Cal up and say, hey, the squadron really is coming down Saturday morning. He wants to do an inspection. Now, you talk about a military operation. We'd all pack up, and using the vans, we move everybody out to different people's houses in the area where we're sleeping on the floor or the couch or wherever you could. Everything was gone. The squadron leader would turn up on the Saturday morning and walk through the house. There was absolutely no sign of anybody in the house at all except them. And he said, some of the locals say that there's a lot of people living here, and there's busloads of people coming and going. Cal said, no, we sometimes have friends up from London over the weekend, but maybe that's what they're talking about. So anyway, satisfied, he'd go back up, and we'd all move back in again and set up.
Well, I remember Cal and Val had a house on St. James's Road in East Grinstead by the train station, and my mom had rented the front room for her, Terry and I, and we had all of our containers in there the tea chest that had shipped from Australia with us, and my brother had the closet upstairs at the top of the stairway. They'd turned that into a little bedroom with a bed in it. And then, different people were in every room, and we all joined and used the same kitchen.
That's right, community kitchen. Well, that was the second place we went to after we left Hillcrest. So the locals didn't quit. They kept nagging at the squadron leader until he called the agent again, a few months later. He said, look, some of my neighbors down there are really insistent. There's a lot of people living in that house. I need to come down and check it again. And he said, oh, okay, Mr. So-and-so, whatever it was. And of course, he'd tell Cal and we'd all bloody move out again. I mean, you wouldn't believe the military precision we just did and left no sign at all. And so the second time he came down and inspected, of course, he saw nothing. And after that, he didn't take any notice of all the complaints from the locals. So we had it free and clear. But I tell you, that was so well done. That was.
Let me ask you now, just to finish on the briefing course, how long then was it expected from start to finish that people would take on doing the briefing course?
There was no term at all. It's just that, see, Otto was just such a prick that he, and how could he possibly read an ACOB and listen to a tape at the same time and get the whole bloody picture? And of course, you found out sometimes later why, because there was one point where he was auditing somebody and he said to the pre-clear, if you don't stop talking about that, I'm not going to audit you. Now, what kind of an auditor does that to a pre-clear? I mean, that's totally bloody wrong. It's totally wrong. And then when we wanted a leave of absence from St. Hill, he wrote, declare them degraded beings. Well, you don't declare people degraded beings, you declare them SP. So you see, he had this confusion about declare them degraded beings and kick them out.
Right. Well,
how long would the normal person take on the briefing course in those days? Was it
about the same as about probably 6 to 8 months?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had one other question about, Hubbard would come in and give those lectures. Afterwards, would he mingle with the students and talk to them, or would he just go in, do his lecture, and leave?
Go on, back to the manor.
Got it.
Yeah.
There was a point he used to go on his walks around St. Hill, and he would stop and chat with the students. But when he would go, not when you were there. I have photos of when my parents were there. He would do that.
Well, he probably was. But see, at the end of the day, I took off. I didn't stick around to talk to anybody. See? I mean, I had a job of taking students home in the bus. Right. So I crossed to Tunbridge Wells. So I didn't have time to be standing around waiting to see Ron walk by.
And one last question.
I remember as a kid, someone was pointing that there was something up in the sky, and someone told Hubbard we were all out there looking at the sky. So he came out and joined us all. And he says, oh, that's just a weather balloon, where people were like into aliens and, is it coming down? And he's like, no, it's a weather balloon.
I heard that. Now, that mahogany desk I had up there in the
castle.
The castle. I had that as a staff review officer. As a staff review officer, I was doing disagreement checks and sec checks up there. One day, knock comes to the door. Okay, get out. We need this for paying pre-clears. I said, where do I go? Don't tell me your troubles. Get out. So I had to pack up my gear, and I lost my room because there were so many people coming for power that they needed my room. Well, there was no room for me. I'm the staff review officer, and what am I going to do? So I went down there to beside the chapel, the avenue between the chapel and the canteen, and there was a coat locker there. Do you remember the coat locker?
Next to the canteen?
Yeah, opposite.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
There was a coat locker there, and next to the coat locker was a broom closet. Now, the broom closet's only about 4 feet across, but it's about, probably 10 feet deep. And there were mops and buckets and all kinds of crap in there, and one incandescent bulb coming down with a reflector.
Yeah.
So I moved all the buckets out and put them in the
that became your auditing room, huh? The broom closet.
I swept it out, got myself a card table, a couple of chairs, set up there, I'm back in business. Anyway, I'm happily doing my job. One day, they come and knock on the door and said, "Out, we need your room for paying pre-clears." I said,
"Oh gosh,
that's a broom closet." They said, "We need your broom closet." And they kicked me out of my broom closet. Well, I walked around looking all over St. Hill. There was no other bloody place to go. So I went up to the tennis court, which is up.
Yep.
And I set up my table on the tennis court and a couple of rocks to hold the paperwork in place, and I went back into business.
I remember I'd go up to the tennis courts and you'd see in session signs on the changing rooms up there.
Well, there was a little pavilion, and I had to audit in there when it rained. But until the sun went down, I was sitting in the middle of the bloody tennis court. Well, guess what? When the sun went down, I couldn't audit, couldn't see anything. There's no lights up there. So at the end of the week, my boss said, Helen Pollen was running qual then. She said, "Your stats are down." I said, "Yeah, well, I don't have a place to audit." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, he kicked me out of my broom closet. I'm up on the tennis court. And when the sun goes down, I can't see to audit." She said, "I don't want to hear any excuses." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Fuck you, Helen. I can't audit if I can't see."
You know what you could have done? Maybe use the back of your van that didn't have any seats in it and just use. Let me ask you another question. Let me ask you another question about the briefing course. Okay. So when you finish, like later on, I don't know if it was like this on the original briefing course, you would do auditor training, you would do your theory and drills and all that. And then you would get, do a little bit of auditing and you'd pass your course. And then you would have to do an internship where you actually audited a lot before they would actually certify you to, whatever class auditor. Did that exist then or no?
No, that didn't happen until you got to Power. Power, you had an internship. Okay. Because essentially, when you come off the briefing course, you were fully trained. Mm-hmm. So all you had to do was understand the theory of power and how it's delivered, and then you were doing an internship. See, and that's when Otto came and pulled me off and put me on staff review, I suppose. And he also took Joyce off and put her on Tech Sec post.
So people know Joyce is Barry's wife.
Yeah, Joyce was actually the supervisor on levels 1 and 2, or 0 and 1. I forget now, one of the two. Well, your statistic as a supervisor was the number of students that graduated. Okay. The statistic of the examiner was the number of students she flunked. Now, there's an oxymoron for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A conflict of bloody interest. So, right on Christmas, a week before Christmas, Joyce had 13 students ready to go to the examiner. And I think 12 of the 13 passed fine. The next week, she had a dearth of students ready. There was only 6 or 7 ready to go. So here it is right on Christmas Eve, and a memo comes around and says, if your stats are below normal, you have to stay here at St. Hill all over Christmas. Well, because Joyce's stats were down from the previous week, she was told she had to stay at St. Hill. And Joyce said, "No, I'm not." She went home.
Was that 65 or 66?
No, that'd be 68.
Oh, 68. Oh, okay.
January 68.
That was after you did the Class 8 course on the ship.
No, that was October 68 Class 8 course. That was later.
Yeah.
No, Joyce, that was Christmas of 68. The 67 was when she said you had to stay here all over Christmas. And she said, "Okay, no, I'm out of here." And she left. Well, they sent a messenger down to her and said, "You better come back to St. Hill or you'll be downgraded to a lower condition of sconge if you don't come back." Joyce said, "Thanks for telling me." Slammed the door. So she packed a bag and she said, "I'm off to London." So we put her on the train on Sunday night and off she went to London. This is the day after Boxing Day.
What'd she do in London?
She got a job as a typist or something and found herself a place to stay. And she said, "I'm not going to tell you where I am because you can't tell them." I said, "Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Then I can't tell them." So Herbie Parkhouse said to me, "Look, just tell Joyce we just want to talk to her." You heard that before? "We just want to talk to her." I said, "Well, I don't know where she is, Herbie." "Oh, yes, you must know." I said, "No, I told her, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Then I can't tell you."
Was Herbie Destemsek at that time?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so Joyce was all established in London before the end of the year. I was still stuck at St. Hill. We'd asked for a leave of absence, which had been approved as long as get someone to take my place of equal training level and case shape. Well, that screws you, doesn't it? So I was flat out trying to get anybody to take my place, but I was trying. And that's when the Sea Org came in, the first mission, with Joe Van Staden was the leader of it. And
Jill.
the new Org board had no staff review officer. My post had been unmocked. So I went into the Org exec sec and said, "Hey, I'm going to take my leave of absence. I no longer have a post. My post has been removed." And he went, "I guess so." And I raced home and I got a bag. I threw my clothes in it. And they tell me later on I'd no sooner left, half an hour later, come looking for me.
You got out there in time. Where'd you go? London to find Joyce?
Yeah, I forget how I found her, because she must have told me where she was eventually. I don't remember now. Yeah. But anyway, we got a place in Manson Place in South Kensington, and that's where we actually got married a month later. And that was in 68. And then we found out that Austin was looking for auditors. So we said, "Hey, we're available." So they sent us the airfare and we flew down to Austin.
Austin, Texas.
Yeah, Austin, Texas.
In the United States, yeah.
I was auditing in Qual and Joyce was supervisor. And Richard Wrigley was working for the Austin Org, and he went to St. Hill to do the course.
Yeah.
And then when the course was closed, they wanted to trade his contract with Austin for our two contracts, the remainder of our two contracts at St. Hill. So we got our contracts exchanged.
Oh.
And we served our time off in Austin.
I want to go back. You bring up Richard Wrigley, who you exchanged contracts with. He actually, shortly after that, ended up on the Royal Scotsman, and he was the ship's representative doing public relations for us.
Uh-huh. What happened to him?
So, he left. I don't know. I don't remember, but he was there for several years. Yeah, he was a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, okay. Time's up. We
got you through St. Hill and to Austin, Texas, and you haven't done the Class 8 course yet. But we'll get to that. You did mention you got sent. You got sent from Austin. But yeah, we'll do that on the next show.
Because how I got to go to Class 8 is very interesting.
Okay, great.
And how I got back to Texas after Class 8 is interesting.
Is another story.
Stay tuned, everybody. That'll be the teaser for the next show.
Quite a story. Well, we'll cover it next time.
Okay, good.
Great. All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for watching. Of course, as usual, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button and notification button. If you have any questions for Barry or us or any comments, please go down below. And right away, we definitely like to read them, and we appreciate any feedback. And then if you want to support our channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Any support is greatly appreciated. And of course, Janice, you can buy Janice's books, and you can buy Koala Calm and all that. There's little links down below that you can click on, and you can get an autographed copy of Janice's books down there. So if you're interested in that, you can get it there. Janice and Barry, you got anything else you'd like to say here before we end off?
No, just be happy.
Look,
Barry, just be happy.
Barry, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, everybody. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.